Day one woke in a hospital bed on Earth. Clean white sheets, soft lighting, the smell of antiseptic. For a moment he thought he was dead, that this was some kind of afterlife. Then the pain hit, reminding him he was very much alive. His sister Bora sat beside the bed, her eyes red from crying. When she saw him wake, she grabbed his hand so tightly it hurt. "You idiot," she said, voice breaking. "You stupid, reckless idiot. Do you have any idea what I went through? 3 weeks with no word, just rumors that my brother fought an entire fleet, that you were dead, that you were captured, that you were— I'm sorry," Day one whispered. His throat was raw, his voice barely working. "I didn't mean to worry you." She laughed through tears. "Didn't mean to? You destroyed 42 warships. You're all over the news. There are protests outside the hospital. Half the people want to give you a medal. The other half want you arrested for starting a war." "I didn't start anything," Day one said. "I just didn't want to surrender." Bora wiped her eyes. "The doctors say you'll recover malnutrition, hypothermia, some radiation exposure, but you'll be fine. Physically anyway." She looked at him carefully. "How are you, really?" Day one closed his eyes. He saw the Eternal Dominion falling, saw the ships exploding, heard the screams on the Vrexian emergency channels before the transmissions went dead. "I killed a lot of people, Bora. Thousands, maybe. They were trying to kill me, but that doesn't make it easier to live with." "They sent 50 ships to capture you," Bora said firmly. "One man." "What did they expect would happen?" "They expected me to surrender," Day one replied. "Any reasonable person would have. The odds were impossible. But I'm not reasonable. I'm human, and humans don't know when to quit." A doctor entered, followed by 2 Earth Defense Force officers. The senior officer, a woman with commander's insignia, stepped forward. "Mr. Day one, I'm Commander Park. We need to debrief you about the engagement. When you're feeling strong enough." "What happens to me after?" Day one asked. "Am I under arrest?" Commander Park shook her head. "You're a civilian who defended himself against military aggression. The Galactic Council has cleared you of any wrongdoing. In fact, they've awarded you the Star of Valor, the highest honor they can give a non-member species. You're a hero." "I'm a smuggler who got lucky," Day one said. "You're the man who proved humans can't be pushed around," Park replied. "Do you know what's happened since news of the battle spread? 17 species have requested formal diplomatic relations with Earth. Trade agreements are being proposed. We're being invited to join galactic institutions we've been excluded from for decades, all because you refused to surrender." Day one tried to process this. He had been running from responsibility his whole life. Now he had accidentally become responsible for changing humanity's place in the galaxy. "Can I refuse the medal?" he asked. Park smiled. "You can, but it would help morale if you accepted. People need heroes right now. The galaxy is a scary place, and you've shown that humans can survive it. In Vrexian space, the fallout from the disaster was severe. High Command tried to keep the engagement classified, but too many people knew the truth. Crew members talked. Officers whispered. The story spread despite all efforts to contain it. Commander Thelvar was reassigned to a desk position, effectively ending his military career. He spent his days filing reports and analyzing tactical data, far from any command. But he continued to study the battle, trying to understand how everything went so wrong. One night, working late, he received an unexpected communication. It was encrypted with civilian codes, bounced through a dozen relays to hide its origin. When he decoded it, he found a simple text message. "Commander Thelvar, I know you tried to stop this. I know you argued against the attack. I'm sorry for what happened to your ships and crews. I didn't want any of this, but thank you for ordering the evacuation. You saved lives when it mattered. Maybe someday our species can meet without weapons between us. Until then, fly safe, Day one." Thelvar stared at the message for a long time. The human had tracked him down, had risked exposing himself to send a message of, what, apology? Respect? He didn't know how to feel about it. Finally, he composed a reply. "Day one, you fought with honor by your people's standards. We failed to understand that different species fight differently. This was our error, not yours. I hope we can learn from this. Perhaps in another life we could have been friends rather than enemies. Fly safe, Thelvar." He sent the message and deleted all records of the conversation. Then he returned to his analysis, but with a new perspective. He was studying not to find fault, but to understand. And understanding, he realized, was the first step toward preventing another disaster. On Earth, the government was struggling with humanity's new status. Ambassador Yunhee returned home to meetings with world leaders, all wanting to know how to capitalize on the situation. "We have leverage now," the Secretary General said. "The galaxy fears us. We can demand better trade terms, more territory, military alliances." Yunhee shook her head. "They don't fear us. They fear what Day One represents. One human fought 42 ships and won. Imagine what they think we could do as a unified species. We need to be careful. Fear breeds respect, but it also breeds resentment. If we push too hard, we create enemies. Then what do you suggest?" a council member asked. "We accept the recognition," Yunhee said. "We join the galactic community as equals. We trade, we cooperate. We show that humans can be partners, not just threats. Day One proved we can fight. Now we prove we can build." The strategy was approved. Earth began serious integration into galactic civilization. Human engineers shared technology. Human scientists collaborated on research. Human merchants established trade routes. And slowly, carefully, the image of humans began to change from dangerous unknowns to valuable contributors. Day One watched all this from his sister's apartment in Seoul. He had refused all interviews, declined all honors except the council medal, which he accepted in a private ceremony and immediately donated to a museum. He wanted nothing more than to return to anonymity, but anonymity was impossible now. His face was known across the galaxy. The silent echo, recovered from the rogue planet, was being restored and placed in the Museum of Human Achievement. He couldn't even walk down the street without being recognized. "You could join the Defense Force," Bora suggested one evening. "Commander Park offered you a position. You could teach others what you know." "I don't want to teach people how to kill," Day One said. "I've done enough of that." "Then what will you do?" Day One looked out the window at the city lights. Seoul had changed since he left 12 years ago. Taller buildings, more alien visitors, ships from other worlds landing at the spaceport. Earth was becoming part of something larger. "I think I'll stay here for a while," he said. "Spend time with family. Remember what I was fighting to protect. Maybe eventually I'll go back to space, but not yet. Right now I just want to be normal." Bora laughed. "Brother, you destroyed a fleet. You're never going to be normal again." 6 months after the battle, the Galactic Council held a formal ceremony. Representatives from every member species attended. The topic was humanity's admission as a full council member, with all rights and responsibilities. The vote was unanimous. Ambassador Yunhee stood before the assembly, accepting humanity's place among the stars. In her speech, she referenced Day One's battle without naming him directly. "There is a saying among my people," she told the gathered aliens. "The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. But sometimes the nail is made of harder metal than the hammer. When 50 vessels were sent to capture one human, the galaxy expected us to submit. Instead, we showed that humans are made of stronger stuff." She paused, looking around the chamber. "We don't seek dominance. We don't want to conquer. But we will not be conquered either. We offer partnership to those who treat us as equals. To those who see us as prey, we offer a lesson. We are human. We adapt, we survive. We prevail. Remember that, and we'll build a galaxy worth living in together." The chamber erupted in varied forms of applause, from clapping to harmonic resonance to bioluminescent displays. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not through diplomacy or technology, but through the stubborn refusal of one man to surrender. In the museum, visitors from 100 worlds came to see the silent echo. The ship was scarred and battered, showing every wound from its impossible battle. Children pressed against the viewing barriers, asking their parents if the stories were true. Could one human really fight so many ships and win? The parents would read the plaque, tell the story, and wonder, not just about Day One, but about what humanity represented. A species that fought impossible odds, that turned disadvantages into weapons, that simply refused to lose. And somewhere in Seoul, Day One walked through a market with his sister, buying vegetables and laughing at her jokes. He saw the alien tourists pointing and whispering. He knew they recognized him, but he didn't acknowledge it. He was just a man trying to live his life, carrying the weight of what he had done and trying to find peace with it. He knew he would never forget the eternal dominion falling, never forget the ships exploding, never forget the price of survival. But he also knew that his choice had changed everything, had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. "All ships," she said slowly, "withdraw to orbit. but to the Galactic Council chamber was built to hold representatives from 100 worlds. Today it felt too small. Ambassador Yunhee stood at the center podium, surrounded by holographic displays showing the carnage at the rogue planet. 20 Vrexian ships destroyed, another 15 damaged beyond immediate repair, and the human responsible was still alive. The council speaker, a crystalline being from the Thalas Confederacy, projected its voice through harmonic resonance. Ambassador Yunhee, the Vrexian Dominion has filed a formal complaint. They claim your species is engaging in unprovoked warfare. They demand reparations and the immediate surrender of the human called Dewan. Yunhee had prepared for this moment. She had spent 3 days studying the engagement data, reviewing every sensor log, every communication. The Vrexians had made their recordings public, thinking it would shame humanity. Instead, they had given her exactly what she needed. The Vrexian Dominion deployed 50 military vessels to capture 1 civilian, she said calmly. They fired first. They refused to allow retreat. They pursued him into hazardous conditions against the recommendations of their own commanders. Every death in that fleet is the result of Vrexian decisions, not human actions. The Vrexian ambassador rose, his scales flushed dark with rage. The human used deception, trickery. He turned our ships against each other. He used the environment as a weapon. These are the tactics of cowards, not warriors. These are the tactics of survival, Yunhee replied. She activated the holographic display, showing footage from the battle. Let me explain something about humans that your military analysts should have discovered before sending a fleet. The display showed human history. Battles across millennia. She showed ancient armies using terrain to defeat superior forces. She showed naval battles where smaller ships defeated larger ones through maneuver. She showed aerial combat where skill trumped numbers. Humans have been fighting for 10,000 years, Yunhee continued. We fought in every environment our world offers. Forests, oceans, mountains, deserts, cities. Space is just another battlefield. Every tactic Dewan used against you has been refined through countless wars. She zoomed in on specific moments from the engagement. Here, he uses your formation against you, knowing you prioritize maintaining structure over adapting to threats. Here, he exploits your automated defense systems, understanding that your ships fire on weapons locks without confirming targets. Here, he leads you into an environment where your technological advantages become liabilities. The council chamber was silent. Representatives leaned forward, studying the displays with new understanding. You call it deception, Yunhee said. We call it asymmetric warfare. When you're outgunned, you don't fight strength against strength. You fight in ways your enemy isn't prepared for. You use their assumptions against them. You make them defeat themselves. She paused, letting her words sink in. The Vrexian Dominion sent 50 ships because they assumed superiority in numbers, and technology would guarantee victory. They were wrong. Dewan is alive because he understood something your commanders didn't. And what is that? The council speaker asked. That wars aren't won by the strongest, Yunhee replied. They're won by those who refuse to lose. While the council debated, the battle at the rogue planet was reaching its conclusion. The Eternal Dominion was falling. Admiral Kesthal stood on her bridge watching systems fail one by one. Emergency power. Life support, gravity, the flagship was dying around her. Admiral, we must evacuate, her executive officer pleaded. The ship is breaking apart. Kesthal looked at the tactical display. 8 ships remained operational. Out of 50. The human had destroyed or disabled 42 Vrexian vessels. The greatest defeat in Dominion history. And she had commanded it. No, she said quietly. I will not abandon my ship. I will not return to face the shame of this failure. Alert the fleet to withdraw. Commander Thelvar assumes command. Admiral, please, that is an order. Kesthal's voice cracked like a whip. Evacuate the crew. I stay with my ship. On his cruiser, Thelvar received the transmission and felt something he had never experienced before. Shame for his species. Pride in an enemy. The human had fought with honor in his own way. He had given every chance to retreat. Every opportunity to end this without further bloodshed. The Dominion had refused everyone. Begin evacuation procedures, Thelvar ordered. Recover as many damaged ships as possible. We're going home. He watched the Eternal Dominion fall through the atmosphere, trailing fire and debris. Admiral Kesthal's last transmission was simple. Tell High Command, the human won. We were not defeated by weakness. We were defeated by understanding what we refused to learn. The flagship struck the planet's surface at terminal velocity and exploded in a blast that could be seen from orbit. The storm clouds swirled around the impact crater, lightning dancing across the ruins. Daewon witnessed the destruction from his hiding place in the ice canyons. He felt no triumph, no joy, just exhaustion and sadness. Those ships had held living beings, people with families, friends, dreams, and they had died because their leaders refused to admit a single human could be a threat. His ship was barely functional. The left engine was dead. Life support was failing. The hull had cracks that leaked precious atmosphere. He had won the battle but lost the war. Even if the Vrexians retreated, he was stranded on this frozen hell with no way to call for help. He recorded one final message to his sister. "Bora, if you ever hear this, I want you to know I'm sorry. Sorry for worrying you. Sorry for all the times I chose this life over time with family. I thought I was being free, being independent. Really, I was just running away from responsibility." His voice cracked. "I destroyed a fleet, killed hundreds, maybe thousands. They were trying to kill me, but that doesn't make it right. It doesn't make the weight go away. Dad used to say every choice has a cost. I'm paying mine now." He sealed the message and set it to transmit on all frequencies. Then he shut down everything except minimal life support and waited to die. The Vrexian fleet limped back to Dominion space. 8 ships from 50. The crews were silent, traumatized. They had witnessed the impossible. A single human defeating an armada. Thelvar compiled his report with painstaking detail. He didn't minimize the disaster. He didn't make excuses. He simply stated facts. The Dominion had underestimated humans, had dismissed their capabilities, had assumed technological superiority guaranteed victory. Every assumption had been wrong. The Dominion High Command's response was swift and brutal. The entire engagement was classified. All records sealed. Survivors were reassigned to distant posts with orders never to speak of what happened. Officially, the 50 ships had been lost to a pirate ambush. The human was never mentioned, but secrets have a way of spreading. Within weeks, every species in the galaxy had heard rumors. Whispers about a human who destroyed a Vrexian fleet. The details changed with each telling, but the core truth remained. Humans were dangerous. Humans were unpredictable. Humans fought in ways no one expected. Ambassador Yunhee used the rumors carefully. She couldn't confirm details about the classified engagement, but she could discuss human military philosophy in general terms. She gave lectures at the Galactic Military Academy. She published papers on asymmetric warfare. She made sure every species understood that humans were not to be underestimated. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the human question. Some species wanted humans quarantined, kept away from galactic civilization. Others wanted to study them, learn their tactics. A few, the wisest ones, suggested peaceful cooperation. Humans are tool users, the council speaker observed. They adapt to any environment. They learn from every encounter. They improve with each generation. These traits make them dangerous enemies, but they could make them valuable allies. The council voted to grant humanity full membership, with territorial concessions and trade agreements. The price for peace was respect. And the galaxy had learned at the cost of 42 ships that humans had earned that respect. On the rogue planet 3 weeks after the battle, a small ship descended through the storms. The Earth Defense Force had been searching for Daewon since news of the engagement reached home. Captain Taemin commanded the rescue vessel, specially designed for atmospheric operations in hostile conditions. They found the Silent Echo buried in ice at the bottom of a canyon. The ship was dark, cold, seemingly dead. The rescue team cut through the hull and found Daewon unconscious but alive. He had survived on emergency rations and sheer stubbornness, his body temperature barely above freezing. "Get him to medical," Taemin ordered. "And treat him gently. This man just changed the course of galactic history." As they carried Daewon to the rescue ship, he stirred briefly. "Did they send the fleet?" he whispered. "They sent everything," Taemin replied. "And you sent them home in pieces. Rest now. You're safe." Daewon's eyes closed again, but not before Taemin saw something in them. Not pride, not satisfaction, just profound sadness. The look of someone who had survived what should have killed him, and wasn't sure if surviving was a victory or a curse. Fleet Admiral Kezethal arrived in the Helios sector aboard her flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive super dreadnought dwarfed every other ship in the fleet, a vessel that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. She was furious. 7 ships lost to 1 human, 7 crews dead because of incompetence and underestimation. Commander Thelvar stood at attention in her command chamber, expecting punishment. Instead, she studied him with cold, calculating eyes. "You failed to capture him," she said, "but you learned something. Tell me." Thelvar chose his words carefully. "The human doesn't fight like we do. He doesn't engage directly. He sets traps, uses the environment, turns our strengths into weaknesses. Our formations make us predictable. Our protocols make us slow to adapt. He exploits these things." Kesthal nodded slowly. "I have read your reports. I have also researched human history. Did you know their species has been at war with itself for their entire existence? They have fought in every environment their planet offers. Oceans, mountains, deserts, cities. Space is just another battlefield to them." She touched a control, and a holographic display appeared, showing the human ship's last known trajectory. "He's heading for the rogue planet. Why?" "The magnetic storms interfere with sensors," Thelvar said. "He's seeking advantage through chaos." "Then we give him chaos," Kesthal decided. "But chaos that serves us. Deploy the entire fleet, surround the planet. This time we use overwhelming force. No more clever tactics. No more hunting. We cage him. Then we crush the cage until he has nowhere left to run." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "And Thelvar? This time we shoot to kill. Dead humans can't embarrass the Dominion." Day 1 reached the rogue planet 6 hours ahead of the Vrexian fleet. The world was a dark sphere against the stars, visible only by the way it blocked the distant lights. Its magnetic field was stronger than he'd anticipated, playing havoc with his navigation systems. He took the silent Echo into a low orbit and began scanning the surface. The planet was covered in frozen methane ice, with constant storms of ionized particles creating lightning that could be seen from space. Beautiful and deadly. Just like home, he thought, remembering Earth's hurricanes. The Vrexian fleet arrived like a descending hammer. 50 vessels, minus the 7 he had destroyed, spread around the planet in a perfect sphere. Every approach was covered. Every escape route blocked. Thelvar had learned his lesson about giving humans room to maneuver. "Begin descent," Kesthal commanded. "All ships. We push him down to the surface. Once he's landed, the magnetic storms will blind him. Then we send in ground forces." The fleet began to descend, maintaining their formation. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, confidence was returning. This was how the Dominion fought. Not with clever tricks, but with unstoppable force. Daewon watched the fleet's descent and made his decision. They expected him to run, to hide, to try to slip through their net. So he would do exactly the opposite. He fired his engines and accelerated straight up, directly toward the center of the Vrexian formation. The move was so unexpected that the Vrexian gunners hesitated. The human ship was too close to the other Vrexian vessels. If they fired and missed, they would hit their own ships. In that moment of hesitation, Daewon passed through the formation, but he wasn't escaping. He was attacking. As the silent Echo shot past the nearest cruiser, Daewon deployed magnetic grapples. They locked onto the cruiser's hull with a clang that echoed through both ships. Then he fired his reverse thrusters at full power. The cruiser was 20 times the mass of his ship. Under normal circumstances, the grapples would have torn free. But Daewon wasn't trying to stop the cruiser. He was trying to spin it. The silent Echo's thrusters created a rotational force. The cruiser, caught off guard, began to turn. Its orientation shifted, its nose swinging around, and its weapons, still armed and ready to fire, now pointed at other Vrexian ships. Automated defense systems don't ask questions. They see a weapons lock from an armed vessel and they respond. 3 Vrexian ships opened fire on the cruiser simultaneously. The cruiser's shields collapsed under friendly fire. Return fire was automatic. In seconds, the formation descended into chaos. Ships were firing on each other, trying to sort friend from foe in the magnetic interference. Daewon released his grapples and dove toward the planet's atmosphere, leaving destruction in his wake. Thelvar watched in disbelief as 3 more ships went dark. "Cease fire! Cease fire! Identify your targets before shooting." But the damage was done. The formation was broken, ships were scattered, and the human had disappeared into the planet's atmosphere. Kesthal's voice was ice. "Follow him. All ships. He can't hide forever." The Vrexian fleet descended into the atmosphere, and that's when they discovered their second mistake. Their ships were designed for space combat. They could enter atmospheres, but they weren't optimized for it. The rogue planet storms were worse than any weather they had encountered. Lightning arced between ships, overloading shields. Winds that could tear metal created turbulence that scattered their formations. The magnetic interference was so strong that half their systems simply stopped working. Ships lost visual contact with each other in the thick clouds of frozen methane crystals. Day One, meanwhile, was in his element. The Silent Echo had been built for atmospheric cargo runs on hostile worlds. Her hull was reinforced. Her engines could handle the turbulence. And Day One had flown through worse storms on Earth. He used the planet's magnetic field like a weapon. Chunks of metallic debris from the orbital battle were still falling through the atmosphere. Day One used his ship's magnetic projectors to accelerate them, turning falling wreckage into railgun projectiles. A Vrexian destroyer took a piece of hull plating to its engine section. The debris had been traveling at orbital velocity, accelerated by both gravity and magnetism. It punched through the destroyer's shields like they weren't there, and tore the ship in half. The destroyer's fuel pods ignited in a brilliant explosion that lit up the storm clouds. Two other Vrexian ships, flying too close in the poor visibility, were caught in the blast. One was destroyed outright. The other went into an uncontrolled spin and crashed into the planet's surface. Thelvar made a decision. All ships pull back to orbital altitude. Reform the perimeter. We wait for the human to run out of fuel and come back up. But Kesthal overrode him. No retreat. We have numerical superiority. Press the attack. Admiral, we're losing ships to the environment itself. The human knows how to fight in these conditions. We don't. Every minute we stay in this atmosphere costs us vessels. Then we adapt faster than he can kill us, Kesthal snarled. I will not retreat from a single human. Continue the attack. Day-Wan led them deeper into the storm. He found a canyon system, carved into the methane ice by ancient geological forces. The canyons were narrow, barely wide enough for his ship to fit through. The Vrexian cruisers and destroyers were too large. They had to stay above the canyon system, trying to track him through the magnetic interference. But the corvettes and fighters could follow. And they did. It became a deadly game of chase through the twisting canyons. Day-Wan knew his ship's capabilities to the centimeter. He scraped past ice walls with meters to spare. He banked through turns that would tear a normal ship apart. Behind him, Vrexian pilots tried to keep up. One fighter clipped a canyon wall. The impact crushed its wing and sent it careening into another fighter. Both ships exploded in a fireball that melted the ice walls. A corvette tried to fire missiles in the narrow confines. The missiles couldn't maneuver fast enough. They struck the canyon walls and detonated, bringing down an avalanche of ice that buried two more Vrexian ships. Day-Wan's ship was taking damage too. The shields were failing. Hull plates were cracked. The right engine was running hot. But he kept flying, kept moving, because stopping meant death. He emerged from the canyon system and found himself facing a wall of Vrexian ships. 10 cruisers blocking the sky. Their weapons were armed and ready. There was nowhere to run. Thelvar saw the human ship on his sensors. We have him. All weapons target lock. Fire on my command. But before he could give the order, the planet betrayed them. The magnetic storms had been building, fed by the energy of explosions and weapons fire. Now they reached critical mass. Lightning erupted from the surface, not in single bolts but in sheets of electrical fury. The plasma arcs reached into space itself, connecting the planet to its own magnetic field. The Vrexian cruisers, with their shields already weakened by the atmosphere and combat, couldn't withstand it. One cruiser was struck by 3 lightning bolts simultaneously. Its shields collapsed and the electrical surge fried every system on board. The ship went dark and began to fall. Day-Wan dove beneath the falling cruiser, using it as a shield from the other ship's weapons. The cruiser's mass was enormous. As it fell, it created a pressure wave that buffeted the other Vrexian vessels, scattering them. In the chaos of the storm, Day-Wan found a canyon entrance and disappeared into the ice once more. Behind him, the Vrexian fleet struggled to maintain altitude as the storms intensified. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kesthal finally understood what Thelvar had been trying to tell her. They weren't fighting a battle. They were fighting nature itself, and the human knew how to make nature his ally. The Vrexian fleet arrived in the Helios sector with overwhelming force. 50 vessels, ranging from small corvettes to massive cruisers, spread across space in a search pattern that should have been impossible to escape. At the center of the formation, the dreadnought Infinite Judgment commanded the operation. Commander Thelvar stood on its bridge, watching the tactical displays with growing unease. Fleet Admiral Kesthal had given him a second chance. Find the human, capture him alive, restore the honor of the Dominion. Failure was not an option. Deploy the gravitational wake detectors, Thelvar ordered. The human has to travel through space. His ship leaves traces. Find them. The fleet's sensor ships began their work. Every vessel that moved through space left a slight distortion in the fabric of reality itself. These distortions faded quickly, but with enough sensitive equipment and processing power they could be tracked. The Rexian Dominion had the best tracking technology in the known galaxy. Within 6 hours, they had a trail. The human had passed through this region recently, heading toward the Helios asteroid belt, a dense field of rocks and ice perfect for hiding. Predictable. Surround the belt, Thelvar commanded. Establish a perimeter. Deploy probe nets. I want every cubic kilometer scanned. He's in there, and this time he won't escape. Deep inside the asteroid belt, Daewon watched the Rexian fleet deploy through his passive sensors. Passive meant his ship only received signals, never transmitted. The Rexians could scan for days and never detect him, unless they physically looked through the window of his hiding spot. He had hollowed out a medium-sized asteroid over the past 2 days, using mining lasers to carve out a space just large enough for the silent echo. Then he had collapsed the entrance behind him, making it look like solid rock from the outside. It was cramped, dark, and the air recyclers were working overtime, but he was invisible. The Rexians were being thorough. He had to give them credit for that. Their probe nets were sophisticated, designed to detect heat signatures, radiation, even the faint electromagnetic fields that all technology produced. But Daewon had planned for this. His ship was powered down to minimal levels. Life support only. No engines. No weapons. He was practically a ghost. Thelvar studied the search results with frustration. The asteroid belt was larger than anticipated. Thousands of asteroids, millions of smaller rocks, all creating interference. The probes were finding anomalies everywhere, but investigation revealed nothing but natural formations. He's here, Thelvar said. I know he's here. Increase scanner sensitivity. Route more power to the detection grids. His tactical officer hesitated. Commander, if we increase sensitivity further, we'll get false positives on every piece of ice with trapped gases. It will take weeks to investigate them all. Then we take weeks, Thelvar replied. The Admiral has authorized unlimited time and resources. This human is making fools of the Dominion. That ends now. But time was something Daewon had planned for. He wasn't just hiding. He was preparing. The asteroid he had chosen wasn't random. It had a core of frozen methane and ammonia, materials that were extremely volatile when heated. Over the past days, he had carefully positioned his ship's auxiliary reactor at the asteroid's center. The reactor was old, unstable, and he had been meaning to replace it for years. Now it had a final purpose. He had also been studying the Rexian search patterns through his passive sensors. They were methodical, working from the outer edge of the belt inward. Grid by grid, sector by sector. Very efficient, very predictable. And predictability was a weakness. Daewon waited until the search pattern brought them close to his position. 5 corvettes moving in formation, scanning every asteroid in their designated sector. Perfect. He activated a small transmitter hidden on the asteroid's surface. It emitted a brief heat pulse, exactly the kind of signature a ship's engine would make if it were trying to restart after hiding. The pulse lasted less than a second, but the Rexian sensors caught it immediately. Contact. The sensor officer on the lead corvette shouted. Heat signature detected. Coordinates transmitted. The 5 corvettes changed course, accelerating toward the asteroid. Their weapons were armed, their boarding teams ready. After days of searching, they had finally found their prey. Thelvar received the report on the Infinite Judgment. All ships hold position. Let the corvettes investigate. If they confirm the target, we'll send in the capture teams. The corvettes approached the asteroid cautiously. Their scanners showed a hollow interior. Exactly right for a hiding ship. The heat signature had faded, but that was expected if the human had shut down his engines again. Prepare boarding pods, the corvette commander ordered. We're going in. Daewon watched them come. His hands were steady on the detonator. He had programmed the reactor's self-destruct sequence. but he wanted to trigger it manually. Timing was everything. The corvettes were 200 meters from the asteroid. 100 meters. 50 meters. He pressed the trigger. The reactor didn't just explode. It detonated with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The asteroid's volatile core added to the blast, creating an expanding sphere of superheated gas and debris. The shockwave hit the corvettes at point-blank range. 2 ships were vaporized instantly, their shields overwhelmed before their crews even realized what was happening. A 3rd ship was caught by a wave of debris traveling at combat speeds. Chunks of rock tore through its hull like bullets through paper. The ship tumbled away, leaking atmosphere and bodies. The 4th and 5th corvettes were farther from the blast. Their shields held, but the debris cloud blinded their sensors. In the chaos, they collided with each other, their formations broken, their systems damaged. On the Infinite Judgment, Thelvar watched in horror as 5 ships disappeared from his tactical display. Dead or disabled in less than 10 seconds. How? He whispered. The human wasn't even there, but Day-Wan had been there. And now he was somewhere else entirely, during the explosion. While every Vrexian sensor was focused on the blast, he had slipped out of his hiding spot on minimal power. The silent echo drifted away from the destruction, just another piece of debris in a field full of debris. News of the engagement spread quickly. On Earth, in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Yun-Hee received the reports with a mixture of pride and fear. She knew Day-Wan by reputation. A smuggler, yes, but not a killer. The Vrexians had forced him into this corner, and he was fighting the only way he knew how. She stood before the council, facing representatives from 100 alien species. They all wanted to know the same thing. How was one human defeating a Vrexian fleet? You're asking the wrong question, Yun-Hee said calmly. You should be asking why you thought 50 ships would be enough. Humans don't think like you do. We don't fight fair. We don't fight with honor. We fight to survive, and survival means using every advantage, no matter how small. A Vrexian diplomat stood, his scales flushed with anger. Your species is barbaric, uncivilized. The human used deception and trickery instead of meeting our forces directly. Yun-Hee smiled. Exactly. And he's still alive while your ships are dead. In my culture, we call that winning. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some species sided with the Vrexians, calling for sanctions against humanity. Others were fascinated, wanting to study human tactics. A few, the older and wiser species, simply nodded. They had seen this before in other young species. The pattern was always the same. Back in the asteroid belt, Day-Wan was running on stimulants and willpower. He hadn't slept in 3 days. His ship was damaged, his supplies running low, and 50 ships had just become 45 ships, all of them very angry. He recorded another message to his sister. Bora, I know you're going to be mad at me. I promised I'd stay out of trouble. I promised I'd come home. I'm sorry, but these people needed to learn something. They needed to learn that humans don't surrender just because the odds are bad. Dad used to say that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. I'm terrified, but I can't let them think we're weak. He encrypted the message and stored it with the others. Then he checked his tactical displays. The Vrexian fleet was regrouping, their formation tighter now, more defensive. They had learned caution. Good. Cautious enemies made mistakes trying to avoid other mistakes. Day-Wan plotted his next move. The asteroid belt was large but not infinite. Eventually they would find him. He needed to change the battlefield, move to somewhere with different advantages. He set course for a rogue planet at the edge of the system, a frozen world that drifted through space without a sun, its surface covered in ice and its atmosphere full of magnetic storms. It would be dangerous. It would be unpredictable. It would be perfect. The cargo ship Silent Echo drifted through the darkness between stars. Inside the cramped cockpit, Day-Wan checked his navigation screens for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. The supply run to the mining colony had gone smoothly, maybe too smoothly. In his line of work, smooth meant trouble was coming. He was right to worry. The proximity alarm screamed. 3 Vrexian patrol ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly ahead of him. Their blue hulls gleamed under the distant starlight, each vessel twice the size of his modified freighter. Day-One's hands moved across the controls without thinking, years of experience taking over. Unidentified vessel. Cut your engines and prepare for inspection. A harsh voice crackled through the communications channel. The translator made the Vrexian sound almost human, but Daiwan could hear the threat beneath the words. He glanced at his cargo manifest. The mining colony had paid him to bring food, medicine, and tools. But hidden beneath the legitimate supplies were weapon components, items the Galactic Council had banned in this sector. If the Vrexians found them, he would spend the rest of his life in a prison cell. Or worse. Acknowledged, Daiwan replied, keeping his voice calm. Cutting engines now, he did cut the main engines, but his fingers were already flying across the secondary controls, routing power to systems the Vrexians wouldn't detect on their first scan. The Silent Echo had been his home for 12 years. He knew every modification, every hidden system, every trick the ship could perform. The lead Vrexian vessel moved closer. Through his viewport, Daiwan could see its docking arms extending. Standard procedure. They would lock onto his ship, board him, and tear his cargo hold apart. He had perhaps 2 minutes before they were close enough to grab him. Commander Thelvar stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, watching the human vessel on his screens. Another smuggler, probably carrying contraband to the rebellious colonies. This would be routine. Humans were weak, their ships slow, their technology primitive. The Dominion had been enforcing order in this sector for 300 years. Sir, we're detecting unusual power signatures from the human ship, his sensor officer reported. Thelvar frowned. Clarify. The engines show as offline, but there's energy building in secondary systems. I can't identify the purpose. Activate containment protocols, Thelvar ordered. Don't let it escape. But he was already too late. Daiwan fired every maneuvering thruster at once. The Silent Echo spun like a coin, nose over tail, and her hidden engines roared to life. These weren't standard freighter engines. Daiwan had built them himself using salvaged military components. The ship shot forward, diving beneath the Vrexian vessels before their weapons could track. Thelvar watched in shock as the human ship accelerated past them. All vessels pursue. Do not let it reach the gas giant. The 3 patrol ships turned and gave chase, their engines powerful and fast. But Daiwan wasn't trying to outrun them. He was leading them exactly where he wanted them to go. The gas giant Helios 7 loomed ahead, a massive world of swirling orange and red clouds. Rings of ice and rock circled the planet, billions of fragments ranging from dust to mountain-sized boulders. The rings were beautiful and deadly. Ships could navigate them, but it required skill and luck in equal measure. Daiwan aimed straight for the thickest part of the rings. He's mad, Thelvar's pilot said. He'll be torn apart. But the human ship didn't slow down. It hit the outer edge of the rings at full speed and vanished into the cloud of debris. Thelvar hesitated for only a moment. Pride and duty demanded he follow. Stay in formation. Watch for debris. We go in. The Vrexian ships entered the rings more carefully. Their shields could handle impacts from small particles, but anything larger would cause damage. They moved in a tight triangle formation, covering each other's blind spots. Daiwan watched them come. He had killed his running lights and reduced power to minimum. The Silent Echo floated among the ring particles like just another piece of rock. His breathing was steady, his mind calm. This was exactly like the hiding games he used to play with his sister Bora back on Earth, in the crowded markets of Sol. The trick was never to be where the seeker expected. The Vrexian ships passed within 100 meters of his position. Their sensors swept the area but found nothing. Debris created too much interference. They continued deeper into the rings, searching for a ship that was now behind them. Daiwan waited until they were at maximum range. Then he fired his engines and accelerated in the opposite direction, heading for a gap in the rings. But he wasn't finished with the Vrexians yet. As he moved, he used his ship's manipulator arms to grab large chunks of ice and rock. He accelerated them with precise bursts from his thrusters, sending them on calculated trajectories. The chunks tumbled through space, invisible against the background of the rings. Thelvar realized his mistake when the debris started hitting his ships. The first impact caved in the shields of his left wingman. The second tore through the engine section. The ship went dark, drifting and helpless. Ambush, someone shouted. It's coming from... A boulder the size of a shuttle struck the right wingman at high speed. The ship's shields collapsed and the hull crumpled like paper. Emergency lights flickered on, then died. Thelvar's ship was the only one still operational. He spun his vessel around, weapons armed, searching for the human. But Daewon was already gone, vanished into the vast darkness beyond the rings. 2 ships disabled, his squadron destroyed, and the human had never even fired a weapon. Thelvar activated his emergency beacon and prepared his report. High Command would not be pleased. The Vrexian Dominion did not suffer defeats, especially not from a single human in a cargo ship. 3 days later, the orders came through. Fleet Admiral Kesthal herself had reviewed the incident. Her response was simple and terrifying. 50 vessels were being deployed to hunt 1 human. Not to kill him, but to capture him alive. The Dominion wanted to understand how a human could so completely outmaneuver Vrexian forces. Daewon, hiding in a different asteroid belt 3 systems away, received the news through his illegal intelligence network. 50 ships, an entire fleet, coming for him. He sat in his pilot's chair and laughed, not from humor but from the absurdity of it. They were sending an invasion force to catch 1 smuggler. The Dominion was making him important, turning a simple escape into a matter of pride. He recorded a message to his sister, not knowing if he would survive long enough to send it. "Bora, if you're hearing this, I'm probably dead or captured. Remember those games we played? You could never find me because you always looked where I should be, not where I was. Same principle applies here. They're looking for me where a cornered animal would hide. But I'm not an animal. I'm human, and we don't think like they do." He encrypted the message and set it to auto-transmit if his ship's systems detected his death. Then he began preparing. 50 ships meant he couldn't run forever. Eventually they would corner him. When that happened, he needed to be ready. The Silent Echo's computers displayed tactical data, ship schematics, and asteroid belt maps. Daewon studied them all, his mind already planning 3 steps ahead. The Vrexians wanted to capture a human. They were about to learn why that was a terrible idea.